We came, we saw, he died.
You're listening to one of the Valkyries, Hillary Clinton, boasting about the killing of Gaddafi. It is a tragic situation that we are facing, and it's no laughing matter. But when you hear Hillary Clinton laughing after the killing of Gaddafi, and you have to hear this to believe it, you have to understand what we're looking at here is that we've gone from the ivory tower to the loss of power, literally in one administration. That's right. Write it down, steal it, and make it into a bumper sticker. I wrote it 5 minutes ago. From the ivory tower to the loss of power in one administration. You have 3 women being called the Valkyries because of their bloodthirstiness and the chooser of the slain. If you look into Norse mythology, you'll understand what the Valkyrie means, from Old Norse Valkyria, meaning chooser of the slain. In other words, female warriors who are now strutting about with their machismo, thinking that they are so wise because they have ordered the killing of enemies. Do they understand the unintended consequences of their position? Do they have any idea, Hillary Clinton and Samantha Powers and Valerie Jarrett and Susan Rice, do they have any idea what their leftist insanity has wrought? I don't think so. I believe they are surrounded by yes women to the extent that they don't even understand what they have created here. In the ivory tower occupied by the academics in his administration, real men are not welcome. So it has fallen to 3 women, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, and leftist policy wonk Samantha Power, by the way, married to Cass Sunstein, to actually decide that we should go to war against Libya. This decision to go to war against Gaddafi, by the way, reveals just how flimsy Obama's foreign policy was in the testosterone-free zone known as the Obama White House. Believe it or not, I wrote this in Trickle-Down Tyranny on page 147. Trickle-Down Tyranny, page 147. I tried to warn you what was coming, but many people, well, I would say some of you who respect my writings and my broadcasts, bought the book, read the book, and said amen. But you have no idea what they have wrought, because we are not being told what Hillary Clinton, Susan Rice, and Samantha Power have actually done. The fact of the matter is you've only seen the beginning of what's coming. The tyranny that they have unleashed in the Middle East will come home to haunt us here in this United States. Just yesterday on this program, when we were remembering the fallen on 9/11/2001, I asked you on this program, do you think the Muslim fanatics are still at war with us? Many of you said, not really. The media says, nah, it's old stuff. Don't remember any of that. But remember what I warned you. I warned you that they're still at war with us. And God knows that these attacks yesterday were coordinated to coordinate with 9/11. They were saying, we have never forgotten, we never will forget what we want to do to you. We want to subjugate you. We want to introduce Sharia law in your country. And with little help from Politico and CNN and MSNBC and the others on the left, we are winning. We are winning and you are losing. And so the fact of the matter is, while Gaddafi was a certifiably bad man, the unintended consequences of throwing him out is what you saw happening yesterday, where a U.S. ambassador was killed in the most violent way. I told you in Trickle-Down Tyranny, and I'm going to read you what I wrote, I told you that these Ivy Leaguers have everything backwards. In reality, the doctrine that they have created is a convenient excuse to selectively intervene in the internal affairs of our Middle Eastern allies in order to hasten their downfall and hasten the formation of Islamist governments. Emphasis on the last part of that sentence. Hasten the formation of Islamist governments. Why is it that Obama seems to want Islamist governments as our allies? In other words, Obama sees our allies in a way I don't. The fact of the matter is, Samantha Power, who was a strong proponent of this misguided doctrine, it is she who convinced Hillary Clinton to change her position to enter into combat in Libya and destroy Gaddafi. It was Samantha Power who did this. Like the president himself, the 3 women who declared war on Libya are all products of the leftist academic incubator that passes for an educational system in the United States. page 148, Trickle-Down Tyranny. The first thing you need to know about Samantha Power is that she's married to Cass Sunstein. I explained to you in Chapter 6 about Sunstein. He's the wacko leftist Harvard Law School graduate and former University of Chicago professor who was appointed by Obama to the position of regulatory czar. He hates gun owners and the Second Amendment, which protects the right of individuals to own firearms. He opposes hunting, a legal pastime of some 12 million Americans. He's described the suffering of animals inflicted by hunters as morally equivalent to slavery and the mass extermination of human beings. So he is a gun grabber. He hates the NRA. He hates private gun ownership in the United States. He is the husband of the woman who authorized the killing of Gaddafi. The fact is, Samantha Power, his wife, shares Sunstein's and Obama's leftist credentials and their political views. She also graduated from the bastion of leftists that Harvard Law School has become. Power was part of the Obama presidential campaign until she called Hillary Clinton a monster and had to resign. After the election, she took a position as Obama foreign policy advisor. Remember what I'm telling you right now. This did not happen by accident. This death of the United States ambassador to Libya was not incubated overnight. In fact, it was Samantha Power who brought about this death, and it's only the beginning of many deaths to come because, as I said to you earlier, we've gone in one administration from the ivory power to the loss of power, not only in the Middle East, but around the world. Samantha has been a longtime proponent of George Soros's so-called responsibility to protect. In fact, her position on this issue won her a Pulitzer Prize, another leftist award. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, another Ivy League law school egghead, she went to Yale, you see, is the second member of this unholy trio. During her husband's presidency, the Clintons requested that the subject of Hillary's senior thesis not be made public. That's because the thesis was entitled, "There is Only the Fight, an analysis of the Alinsky model." Was highly favorable to the methods of radical leftist political organizer Saul Alinsky, who Hillary described as a man of exceptional charm. As I explained to you in Chapter 5 of Trickle-Down Tyranny, Alinsky is known as the father of community organizing. And we have him to thank for our community organizer president's views on many issues, including that on Libya and on Egypt. I'm not going to read this to you because I hope you have the book in your hands and you can pick it up from page 150. We're now going to go to the issue at hand today. That is the killing of a U.S. ambassador, which is an act of war, a declaration of war, and in fact, in any sane administration, there would have been a repercussion today. I need not tell you that you and I both know there will only be a Carter-esque type of reaction, and that is an outrage because it's only going to get worse. If you care to comment on this tragedy in the Middle East, where not only was the ambassador brutally killed, but 2 U.S. Marines who were there to defend them, by the way, who have names, were also massacred by the practitioners of the religion of peace. When I take your calls on the Savage Nation, try to contain yourself, because I'm not going to permit any violent statements to go out on the air. We all know where violence leads. We have to understand that the vermin in the media, instead of attacking the Islamists who killed our ambassador, joined up together and jumped on Romney for daring to criticize King Obama. We no longer have a democracy, do we? We have a monarchy in this country where the king is all-knowing, the king is all-powerful, the king is all-wise, and if the king is attacked or questioned even, anyone who questions the king is automatically an enemy of the state. A report came out this morning in the Weekly Standard by Daniel Halper that the press coordinated questions to ask Romney. They were talking to each other on an open mic, and they had a sound of the press talking to each other, CBS reporter to an unidentified reporter to another reporter, saying we all have to stick to one question. Just keep asking the same question on Romney. Keep asking him, do you stand by your statement or regret your statement? Here we now have exactly what I predicted in 1998 in my seminal speech at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco, when I wrote a speech, long forgotten, entitled, Beware the Government Media Complex. When you see men like the stooges at Politico acting as mouthpieces for Obama, and you see one stooge after another, and I don't even have to name the alphabet channels because they're all about the same. It's enough to make you understand we've lost our democracy and how we've not only gone from the ivory tower to the loss of power internationally, but we've gone from the ivory tower to the loss of freedom of speech in one administration. We are in very deep trouble, and I want to conclude this monologue by saying thank God Mitt Romney had the guts and the brains to say what he said today. He said exactly the right thing. He should be praised for criticizing the dictator, the incompetent dictator that we have in the White House. I want you to listen to clip 2 and tell me if you think Romney was wrong or right. Go ahead.
I think it's a terrible course for America to stand in apology for our values. That instead, when our grounds are being attacked and being breached, that the first response to the United States must be outrage at the breach of the sovereignty of our nation. And apology for America's values is never the right course.
Good for him. And that was worthy of criticism in order to avoid having to criticize the madness of the Islamist mobs in the Middle East brought about by Obama and the Valkyries around him. I'll be right back.
Savage.
So Hillary Clinton said, we came, we saw, he died, and they giggled over it. I don't know if you missed that tape. It's astounding. It's on the internet somewhere. You've got to listen to this. This murder of our ambassador and his staff in Libya is a direct result not of the anti-Islamic film produced in the United States. It is a direct result of the Valkyries around Obama who are bloodthirsty and apparently on the warpath against the wrong forces. I want you to listen again to our Secretary of State after Gaddafi was murdered in cold blood.
We came, we saw, he died.
How do you feel about women laughing over the murder of a man? These are women who profess a love for human rights and justice for people on death row for 30 years. I'll tell you who has it exactly right. It's the Russians. The Russians are so smart compared to the idiots in the American media. I don't know what country they're living in this country. I want to read you something out of Moscow that just came out of the New York Times, written by Ellen Barry, because it's very telling. Upon learning of the violent death of the United States ambassador to Libya on Wednesday, many Russians responded with variations on, "I told you so." You see, Russia has long argued that the West should not support popular uprisings against dictatorships in the Middle East, lest Islamic fundamentalism take hold. By the way, I'm going to pause here. That's exactly my position in trickle-down tyranny and on this radio show. Are these eggheads in the White House that naive to think that Islamists are going to love them? Are you people that nuts? So in other words, we put them in power and they thanked us by killing our ambassador. Is that it? So let me continue with the article. Vladimir Putin, then serving as prime minister, was especially enraged last fall after an angry crowd killed his ally, Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi, an event he later condemned as a repulsive, disgusting scene. He's absolutely right. They did not bring him to trial, by the way. They butchered him in cold blood, and Hillary laughed about it. I'll go back to the article. Since then, Russia has blocked Western initiatives to force Syria's president, Bashar al-Assad, from power, despite a bloody crackdown on the opposition. Russians' responses to the storming of the American consulate in Benghazi underlined the deep policy divide. A primetime news report pointedly juxtaposed images of Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens' death with Colonel Gaddafi's, pointing at their similarities. This is in Russia. Then cut the footage of Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton reacting to the Libyan leader's death with a cursory, "Wow." Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Magalov said that passions had been stoked by the uprisings and that they splash out in the form of terrorist acts, of massacres of non-believers, or an attack on embassies and consulates, close quote. See, the Russians have it exactly right. Our dummies from the academic left have no idea what their idiocy has wrought. But the Russians who have been there and done that understand what is going on in the world to an extent the American diplomacy corps should be embarrassed and learn from them. I'll go back to the article. The frequency of these outbursts, unfortunately, has been growing since the, quote, Arab Spring. Brought to power political groups of Islamic orientation, either open or indirect, Mr. Margalov said in comments to the Interfax news agency. Shall I go on? The first comments in Russia on Twitter were bitingly sarcastic. Quote, the democratized residents of Libya thanked the staff of the American embassy for its support, one read. Another read this, quote, this is what you call exporting democracy, it seems. America gives Libya a revolution, and Libyans in return kill the ambassador, close quote. Something you'd expect from intelligent people, which apparently we're not getting here in the United States, only in Russia. Alexei K. Pushkov, the head of Russia's Parliamentary Foreign Affairs Committee, wrote this via Twitter, quote, under Gaddafi, they didn't kill diplomats. Obama and Clinton are in shock. What did they expect? Democracy? Even bigger surprises await them in Syria. I'll close off right here on that because all of these comments are in direct sync with what I try to warn you in my best-selling book, Trickle-Down Tyranny. And I keep hammering my Bible. I hammer trickle-down tyranny because I wrote it not to get rich. I wrote it to try and save this kind of event from occurring.
Savage.
Listen, we're talking about the death of a man, the killing of an ambassador, which did not happen under Gaddafi. Ambassadors were not killed. This murder of the ambassador in Libya, this murder of 3 staff members, including 2 U.S. Marines, is an act of war. It's a gaggle of psychotics, criminals, and fanatics put in power by the media elite. Anderson Cooper, remember, celebrated when the Libyans were running around in tight dungarees with BlackBerries, by the so-called media elite and the academic eggheads under Obama. Fanatics, psychotics, criminals, considered the Democrats of Libya. And so the Benghazi Rebel Council, filled with al-Qaeda terrorists, is now presiding over the descent of Libya into a chaos where tribes and warlords and criminal psychotics will spell the end of civilization itself in the area. And we don't know whether this is the actual goal of Obama, not just for Libya, but for the entire Arab Crescent. Because it seems to me that as intelligent as these liberals are, perhaps they actually want this as a goal. Perhaps they want civilization to end in the Arab Crescent. Maybe George Soros has a money angle here. Maybe there's some money to be made if there's a descent into chaos. I don't know. Why would they have funded this occurrence, which they did? Chaos of tribalism, warlords and criminal syndicates presiding in Libya. Now a foothold for al-Qaeda. All because Obama is either the most incompetent and corrupt president in American history. He's certainly inept. The man has not attended 50% of his national security briefings over the last 6 weeks. He's too busy raising money. There was a lack of intelligence. This is a clear failure of his foreign policy, a disaster. But there's a dead man called the U.S. ambassador. He looks like a very decent man, Peace Corps, UC Berkeley, Peace Corps guy, lifetime decent person. He actually thought he could help the Libyan people. A do-gooder, in other words, not a realist. I know the type. Good people, well-meaning. I ran into them all the years I was traversing the South Seas collecting plants, the Peace Corps types, the university types. They're well-meaning. They're nice people. But remember the adage, the road to you-nowhere is paved with good intentions. You actually think that people who live in the 9th century are going to suddenly become Democrats because you told them they're nice people? Do you have any idea they're willing to burn a country to the ground to advance their concept of radical Islam? Do you have any idea that 9/11 is not old to them, it's new? They still celebrate somebody they killed 1,000 years ago. They celebrate a death of 1,000 years ago, and you think they're going to forget what they did to us on 9/11? Why? Because Mr. Peepers in the White House told you that it's all over? It's not all over. It hasn't even begun yet. This is just the prelude to what they're going to do to us unless we get someone in the White House who understands what's at stake. How many different ways do I have to tell you they're winning and we're losing? It is a clash of civilizations. The very same liberals who are stepping so lightly over this issue about a video that was made by someone in Los Angeles against Islam and Muhammad, the people who suddenly whisper about Muhammad are the very same people who celebrated dipping a crucifix into a jar of urine at the Brooklyn Museum, or dipping a crucifix into a beaker filled with elephant dung, and they snickered over it. You remember? I remember the men's names. I remember their names. You want me to name them? I remember the name of the man who ran the Brooklyn Museum who said it's freedom of speech and artistic intent to dip a crucifix in a jar of urine and call it an art exhibit. And these very same people who mock Jesus, mock Christians on a daily basis, spit on Christianity, are telling you to be delicate when it comes to Islam. Do you understand that liberalism is not only a mental disorder, but liberalism is a suicidal mental disorder? And here's the punchline. They're running the world. They're no longer a marginal group of psychotic cowards in the ACLU. They're running the world. They're no longer a marginal group of academic eggheads who you can dismiss. They're now running the world. They have names. And the top academic egghead ruining the world is Barack Hussein Obama. And the only reason King Obama gets away with it is because of the complicity of morons like those people in the media who refuse to accept the fact that he caused this with his naivete, if you want to put it that way, unless he actually wants this to occur. So we have a mess on our hands. And the liberal idiots in the media understand something from this horrible tragedy. You know what they know? This could cost Obama the election, which is why they ganged up on Romney for meekly saying that we need a strong leader here. We don't have one. All Romney said was, this is a result of weakness. That's all he said. And they all coordinated an attack, beginning with the jerks at the alphabet channels, and then the usual jerks from Politico and the other front groups for the Democrat Party. They all coordinated their attack. Mr. Romney, did you jump the gun? Mr. Romney, when did you jump the gun? Mr. Romney, are you sorry you jumped the gun? Mr. Romney, would you jump the gun again? Mr. Romney, why did you jump the gun? Mr. Romney, when you jumped the gun, do you think there are consequences? They all said the same thing. They rehearsed it. Why did they attack Romney when they should be attacking those who killed our ambassador? Answer, liberalism is a dangerous mental disorder. So let's go back to the article where the Russians get it exactly right, and I'll finish it up where they're saying, quote, under Gaddafi, they didn't kill diplomats. Obama and Clinton are in shock. What did they expect, democracy? Even bigger surprises await them in Syria. Others said this, American leaders should not expect, quote, one word of sympathy from their Russian counterparts. It is a tragedy to the family of the poor ambassador, but his blood is on the hands of Hillary Clinton personally and Barack Obama personally. Who wrote that? Michael Savage, the right-winger? No, Yevgeny Y. Satanovsky, president of the Institute of the Middle East in Moscow. That's what he said. He blames Obama and Hillary Clinton for this blood spilling. Mr. Satanovsky said this. He said Russian warnings against intervention in the Middle East came from the bitter experience of the Soviets in Afghanistan. He said, you are the Soviet Union now, guys, and you pay the price. You are trying to distribute democracy the way we tried to distribute socialism. You do it in the Western way. They hate both. He said dictators were preferable to the constellation of armed forces that emerges when they are unseated. Exactly Michael Savage's sentiments, because it's realpolitik. Anyone who understands history understands that this is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. These violent, psychotic throwbacks were held in check by violent, mad dictators. And when you take away the dictators, you have the psychotics and the tribes and the lunacy that you are seeing now. I'll continue with the article, not my editorializing. Quote, they lynched Gaddafi. Do you really think that they will be thankful to you, he said? They use stupid white people from a big, rich, and stupid country, which they really hate. Russia's case against American involvement in the Middle East dates from the post-September 11th campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, but it has been at the forefront of Russian discourse for at least a year since Mr. Putin broke out of his role as prime minister and delivered a passionate criticism of the NATO bombing campaign in Libya, leaving the clear impression that he, unlike his predecessor, would have used Russia's power in the United Nations to stop it. Mr. Putin has dug his heels in on the issue of Syria, frustrating Western hopes that he could persuade Assad to leave his post voluntarily. Fyodor Lukyanov, a respected analyst and editor of Russia and Global Affairs, said this. He said, violence like Tuesday's had been at the heart of Russia's warnings. He said Russia had formulated a post-communist position. Listen to this. It's the last line. Russia had formulated a post-communist position. If you try to impose anything on others, as the Soviet Union tried to do, the result will be the opposite and disastrous. This killing is just strengthening the views, which are already quite widespread, that the Western approach to the Arab Spring is basically wrong, close quote, Mr. Lukyanov said. Now, Michael Savage called the Arab Spring what it was. He called it the Arab Winter about a year ago. And now we see that I was right, that we've gone from the ivory tower to the loss of power in one incompetent administration. If you care to comment on any of these comments, the phone number is 1-800-449-8255. If you care to comment on the Fugazi in the White House, you can call 1-800-449-8255. If you care to comment on Hillary Clinton laughing about the death of Gaddafi as though it was just a paper doll being hung out of a window, you can call me on this at the same phone number. Let's play Hillary Clinton again after they had killed Gaddafi. Listen.
We came, we saw, he died.
You hear the girls? You hear the academic eggheads having a good time over the death of a man? If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about liberalism and how dangerous it is and how vicious it is, I have nothing else to offer you. I'll be right back.
Savage.
So the academic eggheads under Obama, Samantha Power in particular, celebrate the death of Gaddafi, and they think that the very same people, the thugs, the psychotics, the warlords that they ushered into power are going to thank them. Instead, they kill the ambassador and his Marine Guard. And today, the media attacks Romney because Romney meekly said that this is a result of our weakness and we shouldn't apologize for our values. Right away, they go into overdrive. I've never seen anything like this. It's something out of the ex-Soviet Union, like Izvestia or Pravda, where there is a concerted chorus of critics of anyone who criticizes the king. Anyone who criticizes the king is an enemy of the state, to these left-wing fanatics. I've never seen. I don't know anyone listening to this show who may have not known who I was before the show can come away with any thought other than this guy knows what he's talking about. We are in danger. That if we do not correct the course we're on and we don't dump this gang from Chicago, we're finished as a nation because it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Let me tell you that right now. Unless we get some real men with real experience back in control of this country, we're not going to have a nation in another administration. It's not going to be here. Not in the form in which you have come to expect it to be. We'll be somewhat of a hybrid between a third world nation and an ex-first world nation. Will start to look more and more like Portugal rather than the United States of America. Obama is melting this nation down, not only financially, which is bad enough, morally, spiritually, spiritually, financially, militarily. Tell me one area in which Obama has built this nation up, because I don't know it, other than in the use of food stamps. He's built the nation up with regard to third world illegal aliens. Yes, you could say that. He's built the nation up with regard to more people on food stamps, but I don't know where else he's built the nation up. You're going to say this is an example of him building up the nation morally? This is unbelievable to me. It's so clear. It's as though God is speaking to us. God is speaking to us through these acts. Here we are, September 12th. This happens on September 11th. Yesterday on the show, do you remember what I said on the show yesterday on the Savage Nation? I want, guys, get that small 20-second piece ready, because it was, if I never say prophetic, I want you to listen to something that may be considered prophetic. This was from September 11th when in 2001. Listen. States of America. The radical Muslim world has declared war on America. We are at war. We are at war. That was 9/11. That was at 9/11. I played it yesterday, and the liberals had said, "Oh, come on, you jingoists, you right-wingers. Yeah, there's no war. All is well around the world because we have King Obama in power. The supreme leader, the dear leader, is in power. Kim Jong-il Obama is in power, and all is well. And anyone who criticizes him and says the king has no clothing is an enemy of the state." Well, I ask you, are we at war? We're not at war. They are. Well, it's true in a sense. We're not at war. They're at war. They never stop being at war. That's right. We're not at war. They are. Everything is well, according to the egghead academics who are running the country. 1-800-449-8255, michaelsavage.com. Clifton in Sacramento on KSTE Radio. Go ahead. You're on the Savage Nation.
Michael, top of the day to you, my brother. Man, I want you to know, man, that your voice is not, you think it might not be heard, but it is being heard. Because I guarantee you one thing, as confident and as courageous and as articulate as Romney was today, in his last statement, his last three words were, and his last comment was, the Islam spring has become an Islam winter. And you, the one that coined that phrase, Arab Spring or whatever.
Arab Spring, Arab winter. No, Clifton, thank you for reminding us of that. We have the tape. I'm sending you a free copy of A Trickle-Down Tyranny. Gentlemen, if you have the tape of Mr. Romney saying, using my quote of Arab winter, would you play it now, please?
Over the last several years, we've stood witness to an Arab Spring that presents an opportunity for a more peaceful and prosperous region, but it also poses the potential for peril if the forces of extremism and violence are allowed to control the course of events. We must strive to ensure that the Arab Spring does not become an Arab winter.
Okay. Apparently someone read the book. Apparently somebody read the hardcover version of Trickle-Down Tyranny because it's in there. Long before anyone ripped it off and used it on their website, I wrote it. As today I quoted a new phrase that will be stolen by tomorrow night, if not by stolen already on the blogs, from the ivory tower to the loss of power in one administration. Take it and run with it. Use it if you can. As hesitant and as middle of the road and as meek as Mr. Romney is, he's the only choice we have. But let's stay away from the election for the moment because I don't believe the average person gives a rat's you-know-what about this. I was in a barbershop today getting a haircut. I'm going to the very, very tragic CHP, California Highway Patrol, funeral tomorrow in Vacaville for a slain officer who was killed during an ordinary traffic stop. I'm honored that they permit me to attend the funeral. And I'm in the barbershop, and I try to listen to what people are talking about. Nothing. It's as though nothing happened. Oh, no one even mentioned an ambassador killed. Luckily, the woman who cuts my hair has a husband who's an officer of the law. I won't say where, and he's a military guy in the National Guard. So she's very keen on all these things. And she whispered to me, she wouldn't talk about it, but she whispered of what's going on. And she said, I can't wait for next year. I said, let's pray. I mean, you have any idea that the people who really know what's going on know how bad it is? This is awful. It's getting worse. We have a fake diamond in the White House, and the people are taking him for the real McCoy because the media is telling you, don't believe what the diamond analyst said to you. It's a fugazi. Don't believe him. Believe us. It's not a fake. This is the Hope Diamond in the White House. Obama is the Hope Diamond. He's not a fugazi. Don't believe yourself. Don't believe anything you actually see. Believe us, because we know. Well, look, I don't have to pour on the bad sarcasm. I've done it too often. But there's something so wrong with this picture when after the murder of a U.S. ambassador by a mad mob who tears him to shreds, basically, take a look at the picture of the guy. Does he look like he was smothered? He looks like he was beaten to death. They look like they beat him to death, those throwbacks. The throwbacks beat him to death. And instead they attack Romney, as they have attacked me for years for daring to utter the truth of what's going on in this world. And it didn't start yesterday. This was a coordinated attack on the United States, on 9/11, in Egypt, and in Libya, and it was sent as a message. It had nothing whatsoever to do with that film that they're quoting. That's the media's excuse. They're trying to blame the guy who made the film, this little movie that no one's ever seen. Nothing to do with the film. Nothing whatsoever. This is a planned attack because mobs don't have AK-47s with this type of RPG, according to my reading. Some of them may have these weapons, but they don't have these anti-tank grenades that are extremely difficult to procure. So they were given these anti-tank grenades that were launched into the embassy to create the diversion, which permitted the mob to go and seek out the ambassador who was in a hiding place. And they knew where the hiding place was because Libyan security showed the radicals where to attack the ambassador. It came out today. After the Libyan security forces, who were hired to protect the consulate in Benghazi, moved Ambassador Stevens to a second building, they then told the militant crowds where he was hiding. It was an orchestrated attack, as sure as I am sitting here.
Saturday.